So what we're doing is we're making data useful for people who take decisions within an e-commerce company. And usually that's a much broader range of people than you would think have normal access to kind of an analytics guru. And we think everyone needs updated, clear information all the time to make the best decisions. And so we've made it incredibly simple. So people who are like, oh, I'm not really a numbers person, can still feel comfortable with what they're seeing here. So I'm showing you a demo of several different products from several different clients of ours that have been combined. So it's real live data, but it's a demo. So it starts with today. So the idea is you wake up, you have your cup of coffee, and this is the first thing that you look at about your business. So you see your revenue for the day, hour by hour, and you see it with a forecast. And that sounds like a kind of simple innovation, but it's really important because a lot of people will take decisions about the business for the day based on an idea of just looking at what's happened so far. So they won't have a good idea of what's going to happen next. And you can see here, there's a kind of bump that's likely to happen here in the evening. But if you didn't see that, you could say, okay, sales are a little bit lower. Maybe I should do something about it, right? So I have this picture of my business, which is, in this case, incomplete. I only have 8 hours, 9 hours, and I'm going to draw some kind of conclusion, right? Whether I should call other people and get involved because we think there's an issue, or maybe open a bottle of champagne for breakfast because we had a very high, result here. So, so forecasts are something that's built in throughout our whole system. It's core, and it lets you see basically what's going to happen using an analysis of previous performance and looking at what's happened, and using that to forecast what's likely to happen. So the gray line that you see here is your historical for the last 4 weeks. So how did you do on Thursdays? What did that look like? And so you can see whether you're above or below that data. So in this case, slightly below, although started the day above. So what are the components of revenue? Signups and then rebills. And you can see in this case, signups are forecasted to be a little bit lower than is normal. And they'll end the day at around 82. And these forecasts take into account the latest information. And so here are your rebills for the day. And you can see that sort of predicted bump in revenue will come towards the end of the day, really from rebills, this one that we see here, revenue. So the forecast extends to the monthly revenue, where you can see, and I think this is really important, a lot of companies say, okay, here's our target for the month, right? We want to make, let's say, 200,000. And here you can see that you're forecasted to make only 190. So you can take decisions that could help you to achieve your goal. And because of the way that we rebill and do retries at the end of the month, you often have people will have more money. And so we have rebills that collect towards the end of the month. And it's important to forecast that, because without forecasting that, if you just did a straight line forecast, like, okay, let me divide 140,000 in revenue by 23 days, and then multiply to 30 here for April, you would miss that bump. And you would say, oh, we're only going to make 170,000. So we need to make much more dramatic action. So what we do with the rebills is, if a rebill fails, we'll retry to make sure that we can capture, we can make sure that the rebill goes through effectively. And as we retry, eventually what happens is it matches up with pay schedules. So when people receive their money, rebills go through. And that happens often kind of in the last few days of the month that people receive money. And so transactions are more likely to go through. So over time, you end up with a kind of bump there. So then you have the signups for the month. a little bit below what you've been seeing previously, and then the rebills. And there you see that big spike that we were talking about, which reflects in revenue. So then as you scroll down, you get the quarter revenue too, if the company has goals for the quarter and for the year. So you have a constantly updated picture of how your business is evolving. So let's choose location Spain and see what we see. Okay, so we can already see that for this group of clients, Spain isn't an important market. So just a few signups, but we can look at monthly revenue and see if we see that same spike. And we don't. Part of that is that there just isn't very much data.
Yeah.
Now what I'd like to introduce you to are drivers. So what's behind these numbers that you're seeing at the top, like sort of the headline numbers. And the drivers are showing you a selection versus a comparison. So it's the last 30 days compared to days 31 through 60. And that can be adjusted easily in the filters. So here in the filters, we can choose location, we can choose time frame, we can choose affiliate, traffic type, all kinds of different things can be chosen in filters. And every number that you see in context. So you see it compared with something else. And the reason for that is that you don't know if you're looking at a number, whether it's good or bad. You have to see it compared to another number. And what will happen in companies who aren't using Vendo data tools is that number will be in someone's head. So it'll be like, okay, 8% is a good conversion rate for us. Well, maybe last month you had a 10% conversion rate. It was much better. Or maybe it was lower. So this gives you a constant comparison set to say, am I doing better or worse? And then to compare anything. So let me compare affiliate traffic versus type-in traffic and see all of the metrics. The whole system changes to reflect the filters that you've selected. And then what it does is it immediately calculates for you the difference. So here with conversion rate, you have a 6.7 conversion rate here, the demo does, and 7.2 is what the conversion rate was for the previous period, so days 31 through 60. And then you have this very simple, easy way of seeing the difference. So you say, okay, it's minus 6%. And then these curves help you to see how commonly things happen. So if someone says, yeah, our conversion rate is 9%, you say, yeah, it was. So up on the right, it has been 9%, for a few days. But it's also been kind of like 5% for a few days, right? That happens. But generally it's kind of in this area. So anywhere between like 6.5 to 7.5 is sort of normal for you. So if this was a really tight curve, it just had a spike in the middle, you could say, and it was at 7%, you could say, wow, it's really unusual that I have 8% and unusual that I have 6%, but that's not the case. This also helps you to know whether you need to take action on something. So like if today the conversion rate is 6%, you say, okay, that's a normal variation. So this is the frequency at which it happens. So if you take 30 days, 1.2% of the time, you'll get exactly this figure here.
Okay.
That's 6.9%.
Okay.
And only 0.12% of the time, you'll get exactly this.
Okay.
So what it's done is, since it's taking 30 days and smoothing the line, it can tell you like, this happens pretty often, this hardly ever happens.
Okay.
And if you have like a conversion rate at 0.1, that never happens, right? 0.4% is the lowest you go and 9% is the highest that you go.
Okay.
So you would know like, whoa, we better move on this. So here's your member net change. Usually a very complex thing to calculate. And here we've made it very simple. You can see it immediately. So over the last 30 days, your members, if we compare the new members versus the members who canceled,
Mm-hmm.
you're down 4%, but in the previous month, you were down 8%. So in fact, you've seen a 50% increase in your members net change. So how would this be done before? I pull data out of different sources, I go into a spreadsheet, and I've got my data, and I have this sort of snapshot, which I then need to kind of share with the relevant people and explain what's going on. The problem with doing that is it takes a lot of time. You can introduce human error into it, and then you've only got a snapshot. So you've only seen it once. And then after that, you have to do it again, right? So you end up with kind of reading this New York Times from March 18th, and it's not good because your business is changing and evolving all the time. And really smart businesses and successful businesses have an up-to-date shared picture of their reality to take better decisions. So here's lifetime value, another thing that's very, very hard to calculate and can almost never be compared, and certainly not on an ongoing up-to-date basis. So here you can see in the previous period, the lifetime value was significantly higher. So it was 82. And for the selection, it's 65. So in the last 30 days, it's dropped by 18%. So that's a big thing, right, that you would want to take a look at. And this is taking, so here we are at April 22nd or April 23rd. We're taking that, if we roll back 6 months, that would be November, October, maybe October 23rd. And we're saying, okay, 100 people signed up on October 23rd. How much have they spent by April 23rd? That's the lifetime, that's the 6-month lifetime value for those people. Then we go April 22nd to October 22nd, 100 people signed up. How much did they spend? And we just work our way back. And what you find is that in some cases, they spent $84, and in some cases 62, but it averaged here at 65. But for these other guys, the average was 82. But you can see there's still quite a wide range. But this would be a significant issue to look at. You'd say, what happened? What is this? Is coronavirus affecting this? Are people canceling more? It allows you to kind of ask questions because you know what the issues are. And most companies without this tool really can't see these things. It's too complicated. And as I mentioned, you just get a snapshot. So daily sign-up revenue, fairly similar, but you can also see like, okay, on some days you do almost 3,000 and on other days 1,300. Pretty big range, but that's just the nature of the business. So not something to get too excited about. Daily rebill revenue, even a tighter curve. So, but you'll have some, very few days, like this sort of end of the month spike that we saw, where you see this. Daily cancellations. So this one is a little bit different than the others because a higher number for selection is actually negative. So it shows as in red here, right? But basically you've had the same number of daily cancellations. So I'm going to switch to the next tab here. We have home, revenue, members, traffic, risk, finance, alerts and drivers, and benchmarking. So here in revenue, you see daily revenue. So you can see this is the selected date is April 19th, and the comparison date is March 20th. And you can see data for both. So 7.4 versus 6. And you see this. And then you say, okay, here's kind of a big variation. What might have happened there? We had the 29th, 10,000. But then if I look at this low here from March 31st, it was only 3,000. What happened? And chances are that's a rebuild story, but at least lets you easily see in context some variations. Signups, same thing. Sign up count, rebills, and the rebill count. So we can scroll down easily and we can say, yeah, it was rebills. Right? We were looking at that revenue difference. We see it reflected there in the rebills. And a cross-sale report. So here's your bought cross-sale revenue. And you can see from which sites were you buying cross sales, a pie chart that gives you a kind of breakdown of the sources of the cross sales that you purchased. This month's new members, here are your members so far, and here's your forecast, and here's the cancellation. So you can see this set of clients is growing significantly, and there's sort of a forecasted drop in cancellation there. So into the drivers around members, you see new members by day compared to the previous period. Canceled. I think this becomes kind of more interesting when you're really looking at kind of like say different countries or different affiliates or something like that when you're running those filters. So here are the cancellations, and you can see why people have canceled and how those cancellation reasons have changed between what you've selected in the filters and the comparison that you've created. There's a big jump in people calling up and saying it's not my membership. Could be something to watch, right? As people have unemployment, there's economic uncertainty. You know, we would say that's kind of a friendly fraud issue, right? Because it's pretty hard for someone to sign up for a membership, not your name. So let's look at this next one. Yeah, again, so that would be a worrying thing. Chargeback threat, those have increased. I think kind of expected in the economic climate. And then what's going down? So content not matching expectations, there's less of that. So there could be a series of reasons for that. Then in the canceled members per reason, you have a stacked bar chart that's color coded. So you can see content, any content related reason here, and then any price related reason is red and risk is green, so that you can see the evolution over time. And then this is super cool here. This gives you the list of the canceled reasons by email, all sorted by category. And you can export this and you can immediately email people based on category. So what has typically been done in the industry is that people will send kind of a discount to all X members. But if only, let's say, half of the people cancel because of price, then maybe discount isn't the issue. You know, maybe it's content, there isn't enough. And you can email those other people and say, hey, now there's additional content. Or if it's a risk issue, maybe you don't want to email those people at all. We just don't want them in our system, right? So you can immediately sort and send, which is great. And you know whether they're expired or not in the cancellation and expiration date. So this is all about just making that workflow easier so that you can do it more often. So that emailing members could be like a daily thing, you know, rather than we have to batch it and do it every 2 weeks. Here's traffic. This is traffic to our pre-join or join pages. And it lets you see how traffic is evolving over time. So same format so far, forecast for the month, the quarter, and the year. And then you can track it over time, see whether it's increasing or decreasing. Click-through rate is going from a pre-join to a join page. And conversion rate is going from a join page to a sale. So the next one is risk. So what we do here is we forecast chargebacks by count and ratio, so that you can see what's happening, what's likely to happen, which is the key thing, because then you can make a change, right? Once you sort of go over a limit, it's too late. So this is again updated with a new count forecast and ratio, and it gives you your historical as well. Yellow here would mean that you're in the warning range for each different card scheme, Visa and MasterCard. And then you have this little red line here, which gives you whether you're going to go over or not. So 1% for Visa and 1.5 for MasterCard. And it shows you how things are expected to evolve. And so then it's broken down by Visa and MasterCard. Then you also have refunds here. And you can see the counts, 45 refunds in December. And then you can see the ratio. So 1%, 2%. So lower, but then it's forecasted to rise. And I think this is the system adapting to people having less money. So then you have refunds by card type. So by Visa, by MasterCard. Again, all of this data very difficult to pull together and analyze and have up to date, but the whole system's designed to give you that. Then you have refund reasons and the difference between the selection and comparison. So like you could run in the filters a comparison between type in and affiliate and see radically different numbers here. Here's the difference in refunds per reason over time. So, and kind of like we identified earlier, you know, we're getting more kind of chargeback threat, risk, that kind of stuff than we've seen before in the last month. So here's a very simple VAT report. Again, difficult information to pull together from disparate sources, but here it is, ready to go, easy to track. So now I'm going to get into some kind of more advanced work that we've been doing. This is alerts and drivers is something that you can look at each morning, and it tells you what's happened to your revenue and why. And it's using an advanced statistical technique called multivariate regression analysis, which lets you see what caused a change. So here we have total revenue. Yesterday was 5.5 thousand, and that was down 7.5%. And the dollar change was 440. Okay, why? Well, there are a number of different things that could cause it. Rebill revenue, sign-up revenue, cross-sale throughput, sign-up count, conversion rate, lifetime value, all of these things. It will tell you with a dollar amount and with a percentage change what happened, so that you can go, okay, the revenue dropped because of this, and that's unusual, or it's not. So it takes this very stressful situation of like, oh, revenue's down, and turns it into, okay, we know why, and we know what we can focus on. So you can kind of skip the investigation part and move right into solving any issues. And so then it breaks down each of the different drivers here. So we call it alerts and then drivers. So what caused it? And here you have sign up revenue, and you see this is your normal sign up revenue curve. This is what happened yesterday. And then you see what changed. Yesterday's sign up revenue was actually up. So that contributed $128 to the change. And the sign up count at 73 was slightly down, and that brought your revenue down by this much. And in benchmarking, what we do is create a synthetic picture of a business that's similar to yours with shoppers who are similar to your shoppers. So when we look at shoppers, we look at where they're coming from, what type of device they're on, whether they're affiliates or type in, a number of different factors, whether we've seen them before or not, all sorts of different things, device type. We create a picture of your business that's similar, so that we've eliminated all of these things that could cause a kind of a factor not related to your business or your shoppers to influence the results. So that's probably too complicated a way of explaining it. Let me kind of dive into it and show you. So for these guys, if they had almost exactly the same product, but one had primarily majority of their visitors from India and the other had the majority of their visitors from the US, every metric would be different
Hmm.
and it'd be entirely driven by that. Then you wouldn't be able to do any kind of comparison. And so what we're doing here is by making all of those things similar, you can really just look at things that your unique choices you're making in your business and how you run your business and and the effect that it has on your revenue and on your key metrics. So here's lifetime value. So in this case, the lifetime value is just crushing it. It's way above the benchmark. So in this case, this company, the demo is at, an average LTV of 61, and then yesterday, which is this dot, yesterday at 58, pretty close to its average, they're way above the benchmark. So you'd say, okay, that's a strength of ours as a business, and maybe something that we can build on. So then if we look at conversion rate, the conversion rate is actually a weakness. So in this case, the conversion rate is significantly lower than the competition. So you'd say, okay, that's something that we can work on. And so I have a fashion company, one of the other companies that I own, and I paid Capgemini, this consulting company, a bunch of money to do this, to do a kind of benchmarking for my business. And I found that that revenue from your email list, from emailing, should be about 20% of your total revenue for your online sales. And mine was 6. So I was like, had a lot of emotions about that. But what once I kind of accepted that, I was like, okay, got my head back together. Then I was like, okay, what changes do I need to make to get 20%? And we made those changes and now it's 20%. But I didn't even know before, right? So there was nothing I could do about it because how would I, I can't focus on everything all at the same time, right? Yeah, so it's all about focusing your effort where it's going to make a difference and then tracking it regularly, right? Because the benchmark is going to be there every day. So how are we doing? How are we getting closer? Chargeback ratio, in this case, it's significantly lower, which is great. So you say, okay, I'm doing better on that point. The benchmark is averaging around 1.1. Net member change, but it looks fairly similar. The average is kind of in a similar spot. And in this case, the average net member change is fairly high there. So sales were very down yesterday. This is a really interesting one because often what people do is they'll call around to the friends in their industry and go, hey man, sales were really down yesterday. Were they down for you? And you don't really know, if the person is kind of telling you the truth or not. And even if their business, because you're friends, maybe their business is similar, maybe it isn't. Here you're getting, for similar traffic, for similar products, what happened yesterday. And the fact is, it was a bad day for sales yesterday. That's what happened. And so you don't, maybe have to kind of sound the alarm and bring everybody together and say, hey, we go to work on this. We say, hey, yesterday seemed to be a bad day for sales. We don't know why. Maybe there was some big event that was distracting or something like that. Here's traffic, very similar performance yesterday, and then kind of similar overall. So in summary, what we're doing is taking all this data that exists, that's there with any biller or any kind of system, and bringing it together and making it useful so that people can take decisions based on the most up-to-date, accurate picture of the business.